Hello, I'm Richard from Glowing Embers, and in today's video we're going to talk about everything you need to do to maintain a wood-burning stove. And to be honest, there's not a huge amount you need to do ongoing, but it's important that you do a few things. So let's get into it. The first thing you really should do on an ongoing basis to make sure your wood-burning stove and flue system continues working well is burn good quality wood. And by that we mean well-seasoned wood. That's the most important thing. Well-seasoned, under 20% moisture content. That's what you're aiming at. And ideally hardwoods, they will always burn better. So ash and oak and maple, woods like that. Some woods that have a higher resin content also create more tar and creosote and will clog up your chimney, make it more likely to have a chimney fire, but also just gunk up the whole stove, as will burning things like wet wood and pallets and things like that. You really want to be burning just well-seasoned hard wood. That's the first and overriding tip. And from there, we really need to make sure that, that the stove's swept at least once a year. And that's pretty crucial. That's the most important thing you need to do when maintaining a wood-burning stove. Have someone come around and sweep it once a year. Don't think, well, I've not used it that much. It really does need doing. If you've burnt it in a previous year and you go to relight it again, there is a chance, and it happens every year, that some of the embers come and catch some of the soot in your chimney and create a chimney fire. It's not worth the risk. It's much better to get your chimney swept, get a chimney sweep round to do it. It's not expensive and it doesn't take long, and they're really quick and easy to do. They can also check your stove for a number of these other things that we'll talk about today as well, and just flag up if there are any other things that you need to look at. But generally there's not too much, but those are the two most important things: the quality of the wood and getting your chimney swept. Another thing that you should check is your stove rope, which is the seals which go around the door and the glass. It's basically the thing that allows the stove to control the amount of air that's going into the firebox. It doesn't go very frequently, it'll last years, but it is a replaceable part. And the clue to knowing that you need to change your stove rope is if your stove becomes less controllable. So if you're trying to reduce the burn rate of your wood and it's still just burning too much, it's quite likely that you have a leak of air coming into the firebox through the stove rope. So at that point, it's worth changing your stove rope. It's a fairly quick and easy job, and it's pretty inexpensive as well. But all you need to do is measure your stove rope. So it's sold by the diameter, and strictly speaking, all you need to do is measure top to bottom the width of the stove rope that's going around your door. That is the diameter of rope you need. And this is the raw product, stove rope. It's a fiberglass rope. It's slightly stretchy, so when you fit it in, it compresses when the doors close, and that creates that seal that you're after. So once you've chosen the diameter that you need, you literally just pull this rope out. It's just put in with an adhesive, and it can just be pulled out with a screwdriver. You can pry it out and knock the screwdriver around. The stove rope quite easily comes out, and then you just need to place the new stove rope in with some adhesive like this, which we sell in kits, or you can buy separately from our website. And it takes about 15 minutes to dry. So you've got, in most stoves, 2 stove ropes, one going round the door, that seals the door when it closes, and another which is behind the glass, and that seals the glass to the door as well. And usually with that, you've got some clips on the glass which you just need to unscrew to remove the glass first to get at that stove rope, and then you do the same. You channel it out, get rid of as much of the old adhesive as possible with a screwdriver, and then just put the adhesive in, the new stove rope in. 15 minutes later it's dry, and you can put it all back together and that's the stove rope changed. So the other thing that sometimes needs replacing in a stove is the fire bricks. So fire bricks are these things here that you can see inside the stove, usually at the back and the sides of the stove, sometimes also at the top and what's called a baffle plate. They're made out of a substance called vermiculite, which is a fire-resistant, heat-proof material, which their purpose really is to deflect the heat into the room. So it's stopping the heat disappearing out the sides and the back and directing it into the room, through the door and into the room. That's really their function, and occasionally they crack. It's quite a brittle substance, vermiculite. We've got some here. So this is an example of a fire brick that is cracked. You can see a big crack through it. It's quite a brittle substance. You need to be quite careful with the fire bricks to avoid them cracking. Now, a crack in a fire brick in itself isn't a disaster. All they're doing is deflecting heat. If there's a crack in it like that and it still holds together and it still stands up in the stove, that's fine. The problem comes when you've got chunks of it missing, it keeps falling into the stove and you can't keep it up in place. That's really the problem, where you'd need to replace your fire bricks. But again, they're really easy to replace. They're literally, you can just pull them in and out of position, and we cut fire bricks to order. So this is an example of a new set of fire bricks, a complete new set. They're the sides, they're the backs of a stove. You can just pop them back in and it's as good as new again. Some stoves we have the exact templates for them and we can cut them to order. Otherwise, we just need a template and just measure the sizes of them, or on a cardboard template, send them in and we cut them exactly to your size and they'll just slot straight in. So a fairly easy job, really inexpensive as well. And again, shouldn't happen too often. It can last years and years, as long as you're fairly careful with them because they are quite brittle. Okay, so the other thing you're going to need to think about when buying a wood burning stove is the ash. Burning will create ash, and how you deal with that depends on two things really, whether you're burning wood only in the stove or if you're burning smokeless fuel or coal. If you're burning wood, then really it's best to leave a bed of ash. It burns much better, it keeps the heat in, and just they work much better with a bed of ash. I leave a lot of ash in my stove, to be honest. I burn every day during the winter and I leave about a month's worth in. It doesn't need emptying very often really. If you're burning smokeless fuel or solid fuel, you'll need to empty it more often because it'll need to drop into the ash pan to allow the air to flow from underneath it. And you'll just need to empty it a bit more often. It's a fairly simple process to empty the ash. You literally take a shovel and you can just scoop it out and put it into a bucket, into an ash pan. Or if you've got an ash pan like this, you can literally just take it out and dispose of it. Now, another thing worth noting is if you're burning wood only, this lovely white ash that it produces here is great for the garden. So a really good way of getting rid of it is just digging it into your flower beds, into your veg patch. It's like a fertiliser, it really adds nutrients into the ground. If you're burning coal or solid fuel, that is not good, it's toxic for plants. You shouldn't dig it into your flower beds. You need to bag that up and get rid of it as rubbish. But it's not a big job, only once a month or so. So the one thing that you will probably maintain the most in a stove is the stove glass. And that's both cleaning but also potentially replacing. It's one of the more common parts in the stove to go. It's made of high temperature glass, which obviously responds well to heat. It can withstand a flame being directly against it, but because of that really it is easy to crack or shatter it. Glass can either be high temperature or toughened, it can't be both, which means that you know, if you've got a log just slightly sticking out and you close the door and you don't realise it, that can easily crack it. Things like that, it's quite easy for it to crack and you'll need to replace it. And for that reason, it's very easy to replace stove glass. It's usually just 4 screws. You just unscrew them, take the stove glass out and we can cut stove glass for any stove. All we need to know is the dimensions of it. We actually have most models, makes and models there, and you can pre-select them, but if we haven't got your make or model, it's literally a case of just giving us a template or giving us the dimension of the glass. We can cut it for you, and it's fairly inexpensive to replace. I would also recommend just changing the stove rope seal just behind the glass when you're doing it. It just makes sense to do that at the same time. And again, that's very inexpensive to replace as well. But the thing you're probably going to do the most is clean the stove glass. It doesn't matter how good the stove is, there will always be some blackening of the stove glass. Now that might not bother you. Lots of people just run their stove with black glasses and that's fine. But if you like that crystal clear view of the fire, and to be honest, that is part of the charm of having a wood burning stove, is having that lovely sort of cozy, flickering, warm flame, then this is something that you'll do fairly regularly, but it's a pretty quick and easy job. The first tip to keep your glass as clean as possible kind of goes back to how you use the stove. It goes back to what wood you burn on it, and it goes back to how you use your air controls. So, said right at the start of the video, using dry seasoned wood is the best thing. It's the best thing all round, but it's the best thing if you want to keep your glass clean, because wet wood will produce a lot more tar, and that goes on the glass as well, and you'd be surprised how quickly that blackens your glass if you're burning poor quality wood, and that's a real indicator that your wood isn't seasoned. So that's the first thing. The second thing is your air wash. On this is the top control here. They're usually at the top, slightly different on different stoves, but as you can see, this vent here, that is, this control here is controlling the air that gets channeled right in front of the glass, and the idea is that keeps the flames away from the glass, and it's the flames touching the glass that really blackens the stove glass. Another tip is the further back in the stove box you have your logs, the less chance that the flames are going to actually touch the glass. So those are the tips in maintaining it, but ultimately you're going to be cleaning that glass if you want a crystal clear glass. And there are a few ways of doing that. We sell stove glass cleaner. It's great, especially if you've got some more ingrained, hardened residue on your stove glass. This is really good for that. You can use washing up liquid as well. And a really good tip for it is either some of this stove glass cleaner or some washing up liquid. Just put onto a paper towel like this, and you can just dip that in the ash, and that actually helps remove the residue from the stove glass. So you just put a little bit on a tissue like that. You can dunk it in your ash and then just wipe that over the stove. And you can see the blackness that came off that, and that's a fairly clean glass. So, and then you literally just wipe it off. You can do that a few times. I would just do another quick clean over that and maybe just spray it directly on. Incidentally, what I should have said at the start of this is wait till your stove is actually cool. So we've waited for this to cool down to do this. It's just one of those jobs you do just before you light the stove, and there you go, that's crystal clear again and ready for your next use. So that's it really in terms of maintaining a stove. The most arduous thing really is cleaning the glass, and if you're running it well, you won't need too much interventions with it really. They're built to last for years. They're solid metal. This stove is a cast iron door and thick steel body. They will last you for years if you treat them well. You should always have a CO alarm when using a wood burning stove. That's the biggest danger with a wood burning stove. Carbon monoxide is odourless but deadly. You must always have one of these installed somewhere, ideally not near a corner of a room, the ceiling, sort of somewhere midpoint in the room. And one of the things you should do is just check this, maintain this. There's always a test button on them. If the battery's dead, if there's a replaceable battery, usually there shouldn't be a replaceable battery, and then there should be one use, and you just get a new CO alarm when the battery's gone. But if there's a battery in it, replace the battery. Just make sure it's working, because they are actual lifesavers. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel to get notified of new videos as they get posted.